Hello and welcome. We have some breaking news. Ukraine is receiving cruise missiles that can hit and destroy the Kertch-Bridge. We are talking about this here. This is the Storm Shadow cruise missile that is being handed over to Ukraine. We now have the confirmation here. Britain, in the Telegraph here, Britain is the first nation to send long-range missiles to Ukraine. Usually the Storm Shadow is air-launched, but usually from the Tornado, but we have information that in December of 2022, there were actually tests happening inside of Poland, whether the Storm Shadow can be used from the Ukrainian Su-24 Fencer that is still in the inventory. Apparently, at least this would be the indication those tests were successful, so they should be air-launched from the Fencer as well. The Storm Shadow itself, the missile, has a speed of roughly Mach 0.8 up to a little higher depending on the altitude, but it's subsonic. It has low observability, meaning it is stealth, and it's flying really low until the point when it's getting close to the target. It has a range of 250 to 500 kilometers. It's expected that Ukraine is receiving those on the lower end, but that is far from being guaranteed. But at least 250 kilometers of range should be possible. The warhead has 450 kilograms. That should be roughly 1,000 pounds. And the interesting part is it has the so-called brooch warhead, which is specifically made to destroy concrete reinforced fortifications, including a precursor warhead to open up, for instance, the soil on top of the fortification. But the warhead itself is made to destroy reinforced concrete, so it should have some effect on the pillars of a bridge as well. Great Britain has 700 to 1,000 of those, says the Independent. So how many of them are going to be delivered is completely unclear. Now, the range of 250 means that Ukraine's currently held territory is in range of the bridge. Whether, as it is air-launched, it is theoretically possible to cross into Russian-held territory as well to launch it, even though it would obviously be dangerous. But as it is air-launched, it's also independent from land. We have seen in the past here on the Snake Island that while it was still under Russian occupation, the Ukrainian side flew air attacks on it. So Ukrainian Air Force was comfortable operating in this area. And if we look here, the range to the important harbor of Sevastopol is a mere 260 kilometers. So all the Ukrainians would have to do is fly to roughly here, and they could hit Sevastopol, for instance, as well. As the cruise missile is subsonic, and as it has a reduced radar range, it has a chance of penetrating into enemy-held territory, but there are some reports that the Syrians claimed they even shot down some of them. So it's unclear, and as it is subsonic, it's also it can be possibly destroyed by AAA as well, like for instance Tunguska or Pantsir systems. Usually, the missile flies in 30 to 40 meters above the ground, but before hitting its target, it usually pulls up to identify the target, and this is one of its strengths. It has onboard sensors to verify, to identify the target, so jamming GPS will not save you from being hit with it, and it even has software and sensors to identify where there's already damage on the target, to hit the same spot to increase the damage, so several shots after each other are able to hit the exact same pillar of a bridge to make sure it actually collapses in a case like this if it's used. The air defense around the bridge, though, should be capable of shooting them down, at least in theory, as while it's low observable, it has to get really close to the target, obviously, to hit it. And the closer you are to the radar, the more likely you can be spotted with the radar, even if you're low observable, even if you have a stealth capabilities. And obviously we will have a lot of Russian air defense systems right around the Kertch-Bridge, which makes it more likely to be shot down. But that doesn't mean that Ukraine cannot destroy the bridge. They could, for instance, saturate the area over hours before an actual attack with Storm Shadows with their drones that they use in Russia so far, be it the Tupolev 141 if they still have some, be it their Mugin, I think, are the drones that they use for other attacks, because every missile the Russian air defense shoots at Ukrainian drones is no longer in the storage of the the TEL, of the transporter erector launcher, and reloading them takes quite a lot of time. So if Ukraine really wants to destroy the Kertch-Bridge, they could probably fly tons of drones, maybe even hundreds of them, over a couple of hours towards the Kertch-Bridge. And once the Russian air defense has spent the majority of its ammunition, they could send an attack with Storm Shadows, even several of them, to have a chance to saturate the defenses. So while it's theoretically possible to shoot down the Storm Shadows, it's also theoretically possible to destroy the bridge. Whether, though, the United Kingdom, will allow Ukraine to use it against the Kertch-Bridge is an open question. As of now, I have not seen that there are any details of that. Usually, Western-supplied weapons are not to be used on Russian territory. Now, while the Kertch-Bridge is not considered Russian territory, it might be considered to be too provocative for the British to allow the Ukraine to use it against the Kertch-Bridge. Even though, if it is forbidden, it's still of immense use, as it will basically mean that any point in Ukraine, in the Euro Ukraine, any point in the part of Ukraine that is currently occupied by Russia is no longer safe. So any headquarters, any command center, any supply dump, any fuel depot can now be hit and destroyed. And if it's coordinated with an attack and the fuel depots are being blown up, so the tanks have only the gasoline, the diesel that is currently in their tanks, and after that they are inoperable, this will obviously mean massive advantages for the Ukrainian side. So even if they can't destroy the bridge with it, it will be of massive use. Should they destroy the bridge, though, and while advancing somewhat down here, then the time for the Russians on the Crimea and in the rest of Kherson is probably running out. The Ukrainians won't even have to reach the Azov Sea for that. All they would need is more or less fire control over the southernmost roads here. But if they reach the Azov Sea and the Kertch-Bridge is destroyed, then Russians are in big trouble when it comes to southern Kherson and to the Crimea. And this might actually be the point where the war is predetermined how it's going to end. So while we can't say right now how the Ukrainians will be able to use it, to what extent, how many they get, to what, whether they have restrictions on the usage of it, it's still a massive benefit for the Ukrainian side, as they will be able to destroy high-value targets far beyond their usual reach. But that's not all. We should remember what happened with the Challenger 2 MBT. This is by far probably one of the less powerful main battle tanks in the current Western world. There are some reliability questions. Its cannon is criticized, but that was irrelevant, because by the fact that Great Britain announced they're going to deliver MBTs, that led basically to other nations seriously consider it as well. And as you might all remember, within weeks, the German government said that if the Americans also provide tanks, they are going to give permission to deliver Leopard 2s. And after the Americans agreed, after the US agreed, Leopard 2s are now in Ukraine ready for the counteroffensive. So while the Storm Shadow itself might not be delivered in the hundreds, while the Ukrainians might have restrictions, this opens the floodgates. This opens the possibility for other nations to deliver long-range cruise missiles too, because if the provocation, in air quotes, that should be understood in air quotes, if the provocation by the Ukrainian side, by the UK side, by the British side towards Ukraine, towards Russia, that Ukraine is receiving those long-range missiles, if this is unanswered in a way that is frightening to the other nations, why the hell wouldn't they deliver afterwards? If Great Britain is delivering Storm Shadow, what excuse do the US have not to deliver the Army Tactical Missile System, the ATACMS, for instance, of this? Now, in February, the US said they don't have enough to deliver to someone else, so that could be an excuse that is actually valid. But they recently delivered some to Romania and to Poland. They could give permission for them to deliver theirs, which would mean that roughly 50 of those would suddenly be in Ukrainian inventory. And we shouldn't forget that Germany, for instance, has the Taurus, the Taurus cruise missile that has a range of roughly 400 kilometers, is also considered to be highly powerful and highly effective. it's also started from tornadoes, from the German tornadoes. So there's the question: should Germany decide to deliver them? How are they started? But maybe then they can be jerry-rigged to offenses as well, or to maybe to the Sukhoi 27 or something like this. So it would have been unthinkable 2 weeks ago to consider that Germany is going to deliver Taurus. Now, with the Storm Shadow on its way, this is an actual possibility of something to happen in the real future, in the close future. This was it from me for now. If you enjoyed this breaking news, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm. Also, leave a comment. What do you think? Who's going to deliver next? What impact will this have on the war? Leave your comment in the comment section. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. We do 2 to 3 situation reports a week where we analyze the current events in Ukraine in depth here on the channel. You might not want to miss this. This channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you. So if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting the channel. And that was it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.